Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Canadian military, along with firefighters from across the province, are headed to Jasper to help emergency personnel battle the devastating wildfires which have torched the town. We hear from Alberta Health Services about the best way to protect yourself from smoky air conditions. And our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari discusses the biggest takeaways from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's address to the U.S. Congress.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. More devastating images are being shown on social media, highlighting the destruction in Jasper as the wildfires continue to ravage the region. So many buildings have been destroyed since the town was evacuated earlier this week. There are reports that close to 50% of the town has been destroyed by the blazes. Parks Canada says the air quality is so bad that firefighters without breathing apparatuses had to leave, but some structural firefighters remain in town trying to save key infrastructure. Ottawa has approved Alberta's request for federal assistance as the wildfire continues to roar through the town of Jasper. Firefighters from Calgary, Edmonton and Sherwood Park are all headed to Jasper to help battle the blazes. The federal government is also sending in the Canadian Armed Forces. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the military resources, evacuation support and more emergency wildfire resources are there to help. Jasper Mayor Richard Ireland sent an open letter to residents saying the community has been ravaged by fire and that the destruction and loss by so many are facing is beyond comprehension and description. The village of Sterling is contributing to the provincial wildfire fighting effort. Responding to a call from Alberta Wildfire, the village has deployed their wildland unit, which is on its way to the Jasper area. Sterling firefighters Dominic Marac and Andre Thibodeau, along with 2 members from the Nobleford Fire Department, left late last night. Sterling Mayor Trevor Lewington says the wildland unit is a specialized truck which is well suited to work in difficult terrain.
These trucks are lighter, they can go off-road, they tend to have longer hoses and water and foam tanks, so they can get to those little hot spots. It's not really for holding back a massive fire front, but they can get in, they can take care of hot spots, they can protect sort of the outer perimeter of things, but they're a little lighter on their feet and a little more movable. They'll be deployed where they're needed, and that'll be up to sort of the incident command team and Alberta Wildfire to decide of the resources they're bringing in from across the province, who's best suited for whatever task they need done. So we're just there to help out wherever we can best be of use. They'll be up on deployment for about a week and then probably rotate out. So we are preparing to have a second and third crew that could go and rotate with them if needed. But our thoughts and prayers, of course, are with everybody affected by this. I can't imagine the devastation, seeing some of the video this morning, that just the emotional toll this takes on people. We want the folks in Jasper to know that our thoughts and prayers are with them and we're here to support them. And this is when Albertans shine through when we pull together to take care of our friends and neighbors.
This is the second straight year that Sterling has contributed to the provincial firefighting effort. Last year, the wildland unit, along with local firefighters, were in the Edson area for about a month. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith got quite emotional when discussing the devastation in Jasper, which has seen so much infrastructure destroyed from the fires. Smith says the province, along with the federal government, are joining forces during this very difficult time to help those impacted by the wildfires. She also has a very special message for the residents of Jasper.
To the residents, families and business owners who call Jasper home, we will recover from this. To the men and women on the front line and at all operational levels, thank you for your courage and commitment. And to those in Alberta and around the world who have experienced the magic of Jasper. The magic is not lost and it never will be. Alberta's government will provide the support needed to families and community to recover and to rebuild stronger than ever so that future generations can continue to experience this one-of-a-kind community and to feel the magic of being able to come home.
Due to the high wildfire risk in our region, the folks with Lethbridge County have put a fire ban into effect. Under the ban, no burning is allowed at recreational campfires, burning barrels and incinerators, also any open flame or fireworks. Charcoal briquette barbecues are also prohibited during this period of time. Heath Wright, who's the manager of Regional Fire Services, says the ditches and coulee areas are very dry right now, which creates an elevated risk for a fire to spread, which is why the ban is necessary in Lethbridge County. You know, poor air quality can affect anyone. Wildfires from Alberta and BC continue to contaminate our air. According to Dr. Alison Gonzalez, medical officer with Alberta Health Services, there's no safe limit when it comes to wildfire smoke. Gonzalez says this type of air contains harmful gases and particulate matter. She says many are at risk, including those who are pregnant, have chronic medical issues, along with infants and those who work outdoors. She describes some of the symptoms you really need to watch out for.
Some of the symptoms that you can expect to potentially experience if you're exposed to the wildfire smoke is eyes, nose, and throat irritation. If you have certain chronic medical conditions like heart issues or lung issues, you may experience worsening of those symptoms associated with those conditions. If you experience chest pain or severe shortness of breath, it's really important for you to reach out to your healthcare provider to take precautions if you can. So try and stay indoors when the air quality in particular is poor. Close your windows, close your doors. And if you have air conditioning, remember to turn it on. Leave the fresh air intake closed. The disposable masks that many of us are familiar with, unfortunately, offer very limited protection against wildfire smoke because they don't have that good seal on your face, and just by nature of the mechanics of it doesn't really offer as great protection for you.
Emergency officials say there are currently close to 600 wildfires burning in both Alberta and British Columbia. You know, we can use some rain in many regions of the province right now. It has been so dry and hot. Jeanette Rocher is now with a quick peek at our forecast here. Jeanette, could we potentially see some moisture maybe develop in our region?
You know, we've got smoke, we've got scattered clouds, we've got sunshine, hell, but not a lot of moisture, at least in the foreseeable future that we can see over the next 7 days, at least in the Lethbridge area. Now, for our friends in Jasper, the good news for them is that they could see some sprinkles tonight, tomorrow, and again on Monday and Tuesday. Now, whether it will be enough to help is the question, especially since most of the damage has already been done. So our hearts totally go out to the folks up there in Jasper. Now, for our region, we saw widespread smoke today. Tonight, clearing, probably due to those 50 to 70K winds. And then we're looking at sunshine and hazy conditions on Friday with a high of 27. I'll be back later in the show with that national forecast.
Thanks so much, Jeanette. After an abundance of rain at the beginning of this summer, the hot and dry weather we've been facing lately in southern Alberta has started to take a toll on our crops. David Bishop, a director of Alberta Grains who farms just outside of the village of Barons, says even with irrigation, the heat is getting too much for the crops to bear.
The dry land is what's really suffering. It's at that stage where it should be filling the kernels and getting ready to turn, and it's turning prematurely, so we call it burning, not turning, because it's so hot. So, and on canola, especially if it's in flower right now, this heat canola does not like. We call blast on the flowers, which means the flowers abort, so we won't produce any seed, and where those flowers are, because they abort. So it's not good right now. We're not no rain in the forecast either. It's just going to get worse and worse every day. It's hot. You know, it started out so well. We had so much rain in the spring. Everything came up really good. Things are looking good. Crops are really lush, which doesn't help when it's hot and dry either. So we're looking like we might get a really nice average to bumper crop, and now I'm going to say it's going to be below average.
According to the province, much of southern and central Alberta has received less than a millimeter of rain from July 11th to the 17th, with even less precipitation since then. Lethbridge police continue to investigate a pedestrian collision involving a 52-year-old woman. They say just before midnight on Tuesday, she was struck by a westbound vehicle while crossing 6th Avenue South along the 500 block. The vehicle, driven by a 44-year-old woman, attempted to brake but hit the female pedestrian before coming to a stop. The woman sustained life-threatening injuries and was taken by EMS to hospital. Since then, she was airlifted by STARS to a Calgary hospital where she remains in stable but critical condition. Back at the Lethbridge Courthouse, the Coots 2 trial, Chris Carbert wrapped up his defense on Wednesday, which included bringing in witnesses James Kelly, Carbert's roommate, and the cover manager for the undercover operations at the Coots border blockade. This officially leaves all evidence of the trial from all parties presented, including the defense of the other accused, Anthony Olenek. The jury is expected to be back on Tuesday for closing arguments. Justice David Labrenz will provide the jury with their charge on Wednesday, after which the jury will discuss and provide their final verdicts. The trial began in Lethbridge on June the 6th. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is blaming the Trudeau government for what he is calling a crime wave across Canada. Poilievre says Ottawa should not allow so many repeat offenders back onto the streets.
It allows the same repeat violent offenders to go free again and again. Justin Trudeau and the NDP told you all that it would work, that all the so-called experts agreed that freeing criminals onto the street 50, 60, 70 times within hours of their latest arrest would somehow make us all safer. Most Canadians thought it was wacko, and they were right. Today, the data is out from Stats Canada. Data released moments ago show that violent crime is up 50% after 9 years of Trudeau and the NDP Liberals. Homicides up 28%. Sexual assaults 75% higher. Violent firearm offenses up 116%, more than double. Extortion up 357%, as small business owners get letters telling them that if they don't pay $1 million, there'll be a bullet flying through their 6-year-old daughter or son's bedroom window in the middle of the night.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was in Washington recently, drumming up support as the Jewish state continues to fight a number of battles, including those with Hamas, the Houthis, and Hezbollah. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari says there were some very important takeaways from Netanyahu's speech to Congress.
The first thing he did very well was strike a balance between we're vulnerable, we got attacked, 1,200 people were brutally set on fire and raped and just mutilated in the worst ways, but also we are tough, we are strong, we will win this battle. And I think that was a very difficult balance to strike, but he did it quite well. Number two was to communicate this unity in that it's not just our fight, it's your fight too. It's not going to be just our victory, it'll be your victory too.
Political and foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will also speak about how the presidential election is shaping up this November south of the border. She'll have details coming up after business news. Dozens of Hamas terrorists have apparently been eliminated by the Israel Defense Forces in the Khan Yunis region. According to TBN Israel correspondent Yair Pinto, the IDF launched their offensive against more than 50 Hamas outposts.
The combat team of the 7th Brigade led a divisional attack and eliminated terrorists by firing tank shells and directing fire from the air. During the attack, Air Force aircrafts attacked over 50 terrorist infrastructures, including munition depots, observation posts, buildings used by Hamas terrorists, and the route of tunnels in the area was attacked as well. One day into the renewed IDF offensive in the city of Khan Yunis, there are reports of dozens of terrorists eliminated and extensive damage to the terrorist infrastructure in that city. This has been accomplished despite the IDF operating with a severe disadvantage, as it needs to warn the civilian population before initiating any attacks on the terrorists. This makes it very difficult to maintain the element of surprise, which is so important to any military operation.
A Saskatchewan-born World War II veteran has received France's highest national honor. Richmond Arthur Deck, who is now 103 years old, received the insignia of the Knight of the Legion of Honor earlier this month. He was a crew member on a Halifax heavy bomber and took part in 31 raids over Germany. That's one more than the 30 missions required of air crews in that conflict. He was shot down during this final mission and captured in January of 1945, spending the rest of the war as a prisoner. That's incredible. The Saskatchewan government is going to be supporting food banks to the tune of $2 million. The province's social services minister says the cost of food continues to skyrocket, and the funding for Food Banks of Saskatchewan is another affordability measure. The group is to receive a $1 million grant next month and another one next year. Officials at Food Banks of Saskatchewan say it's the busiest year yet, and it has been hard to build up sufficient food reserves. Ready, Set, Go is a program to help low-income families to be able to support kids to be more prepared for school this fall in Lethbridge. The education manager of the local YMCA, Arnold Sparks, says the average cost of school supplies is around $700. This program gives free supplies for kids in need. Sparks says the money should not be a barrier to education, and children should be able to learn regardless of their socioeconomic status. He explains what the requirements are and where you can donate.
Essentially, you need to put your name, how many kids, what grade they're in, and then from there we'll link you up. We generally don't really turn anyone away either. So in our first year, we reached 400 kids. Last year, we reached 1,800 kids. And so the program has grown year after year. And this year, honestly, we're set to be our biggest year, approximately 2,000. All registration is done through My City Care. We actually have about 8 locations throughout the city right now, and more are added every day where people can donate. To name a few, the Interfaith Food Bank, the Lethbridge Food Bank, My City Care, and the YMCA of Lethbridge. And actually, the YMCA of Lethbridge will be doing a donation drive from July 29th to August 9th.
Spark says the very successful program has been running for the past 11 years. There are millions of Canadians battling addiction, which can lead to homelessness. In Lethbridge, the Christian group Streets Alive mission has been helping people fight this battle for over 3 decades. Ken Kissick, co-founder of Streets Alive, shares how much he's seen times change.
The difficulty is that 30 years ago, we were dealing largely with drugs that weren't going to kill you today. Today, we are dealing with drugs that will kill you instantly, and depending on the batch that you get. So the need becomes more desperate to help these people get away from the drug life and to be able to move them into something that's a lot better.
Make sure you catch the entire interview with Ken Kissick, co-founder of Streets Alive Mission, and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our program. Well, it was nice to enjoy a slightly cooler day today in Lethbridge after setting a heat record on Wednesday. There's also a chance of some moisture developing in our region. A full look at the weather pictures on deck. After setting a heat record of 36 degrees on Wednesday, it was nice to enjoy a slightly cooler day today in Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is now with all of our weather details. Jeanette, is there a chance of maybe some much-needed rain developing?
Yeah, and I like how we're calling the 28-degree day a cooler day, but you're right, because compared to that 36 degrees that we saw yesterday, it was much more manageable. Now, the question on everybody's mind, will there be moisture and when will it happen? Okay, so what I'm seeing over the next 7 days and the foreseeable future, the answer is no. I'm seeing a lot of sunshine, some scattered clouds, some haze, and some local smoke. So we're getting into Friday here already, 27 for a high, and then into the weekend, Saturday, high of 26, 29 on Sunday, again on Monday with that 29, 26 again on Tuesday, and then back up to 29 on Wednesday. So we are out of those 30s rather, and back into the 20s. So the average high for this time of year, 26, average low 11 degrees. 36 was our high temperature on this day. That happened back in 1939. And in 2001, we had the chilliest, which was only 3 degrees. Sun rose this morning at 5:53 and sunset this evening at 9:21. So days are definitely getting a lot shorter. Okay, so on the west coast tomorrow, Victoria actually was under air quality advisory. Tomorrow, though, clear skies, high of 20 degrees, could see some local smoke in there as well. High of 21 in Vancouver, could see some sunshine. Now, Edmonton also was under an air quality advisory today. Although they did see some showers, we could see more of those scattered showers tonight and into tomorrow as well. In Edmonton, high of 17 degrees, so cooled off quite significantly. High of 23 as well in Calgary. Calgary also could possibly see a little bit of showers tomorrow. Now, we had one final day of that heat event across Saskatchewan before things significantly cool down tomorrow, back into the 20s again. But mainly we're seeing sunshine, we're seeing hazy conditions across Saskatoon and Regina. High 23 tomorrow in Saskatoon, 27 for the high in Regina. Also windy conditions, up to 70K winds there in Saskatoon, 60K winds in Regina. Winnipeg could see a chance of thunderstorms tomorrow along with some showers. High of 30 degrees though, as Manitoba is still expected to see that heat event last until Friday. As we get into the central part of the country, Toronto sitting at 28 degrees, clear skies tomorrow. Ottawa sitting at 26 and 27 for a high. In Montreal tomorrow, clear skies as well. And getting into the Maritimes here, Fredericton, 26 for a high of 24 in Halifax. Halifax could see 30% chance of showers. Some drizzle also expected in Charlottetown tomorrow, high of 23, 2 to 4 millimeters of rain expected in St. John's tomorrow with 20 to 40 K winds, high of 17, but 27 the further inland you go. So there you go. That is your forecast.
The parent company of Loblaws and Shoppers Drug Mart reported a second quarter profit of $457 million. But that's down, however, from $508 million in the same quarter last year. Loblaw blames the decrease on charges associated with the class action lawsuit settlements. The grocer and parent company George Weston has agreed to pay $500 million to settle a couple of lawsuits over their involvement in an alleged bread price fixing scheme. The payout still needs court approval. Federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is laying the blame for high grocery prices right at the feet of Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre. He says much more needs to be done to help families who are having a very difficult time right now buying food.
When you go into a grocery store and you're paying more than ever before and getting less than ever before, you know on the other side of that you're getting ripped off. You're getting ripped off because the rules have been written by Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre, by Liberals and Conservatives, to allow rich CEOs to rip off Canadians. And I know you feel that. You're right. This is not your fault. You're working harder than ever before, but you feel like you're falling behind more than ever before. And it's because the deck is stacked against you. The scales are against you. You've got all the power in the hands of corporations and CEOs that can rip you off, and families are feeling the price.
Canadian aircraft maker Bombardier has reported a second quarter profit of $19 million US. That's up from a loss of $35 million US last year. Revenue also grew 32% to $2.2 billion. The company says it delivered 39 aircraft for the quarter and remains on track to reach its planned guidance for the year. Shares in Ford Motor Company, meanwhile, tumbled after the automaker's second quarter profit missed Wall Street's expectations. Ford posted a profit of 47 cents a share. Analysts, however, were expecting 68 cents a share. It came as warranty and recall costs totaled $2.3 billion US. That is $800 million more than the first quarter and $700 million more than a year ago. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 31 points to 22,608. The Dow was up 81 points to 39,935. The S&P 500 was down 27 points to 5,399, and the Nasdaq was down 160 points to 17,181. West Texas Intermediate oil was up 74 cents to $78.33 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 6 cents to $2.04 US. Gold was down 63.30 of the day to $2,357.70 US an ounce, and silver was down 128 to $27.94 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $7.76 per bushel, barley is at $5.88 per bushel, canola is at $15.26, and corn is at $7.37 per bushel. Live cattle August contract went up $2 to $188.90. Feeder cattle August contract went up $1.50 to $258.63, and lean hogs August contract was unchanged at $93.78. And the Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 72.30 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, firefighters from Calgary, Edmonton, Sherwood Park, Stirling, and Nobleford are all headed to Jasper to help battle the wildfires there. There are reports that 30 to 50% of the town has been destroyed. The federal government is also sending in the Canadian Armed Forces. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says that military resources, evacuation support, and more emergency wildfire resources are there to help Albertans in need. So what will the U.S. presidential election look like if it's Kamala Harris going up against Donald Trump? U.S. political reporter Lisa Daftari will give us her thoughts momentarily. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. All are invited to attend the Town of Colehurst 2024 Miners' Days Parade, taking place Saturday, July 27th. Kicking off Parade Day at 8 a.m. is a free pancake breakfast at the Colehurst Community Center, with the parade beginning at 10:30 a.m. Enjoy beautifully decorated floats, classic cars, antique tractors, and cute animal displays. For more information, visit colehurst.ca. Do you have a heart to serve our community? The Lethbridge Soup Kitchen is looking for volunteers to help prepare, serve, and clean up after meals that are given every day. The Lethbridge Soup Kitchen's mission is to help alleviate the struggle of poverty for individuals and families who are poor, have very limited income, or just in need of a hot meal. They also desire to increase public awareness of the needs of the poor and homeless in Lethbridge. For more information and to volunteer, visit lethbridgesoupkitchen.ca. And that's today's Bridge City News community calendar.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was in Washington recently asking for more support in Israel's war with Hamas. Now, to chat about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, what were some of the takeaways from Netanyahu's speech to Congress on Wednesday?
I think he did a few things quite well. Look, it was a very difficult speech to give, right? We know where the world stands in terms of their, this information war about Israel, all the negative narratives that are out there about genocide, about apartheid, about colonization, and all the buzzwords that are flying around right now. We know 100 Democrats boycotted the talk. So this is all in advance. So for Bibi Netanyahu to walk in there, it's an uphill climb, but he did a few things quite well. And I thought the first thing he did very well was strike a balance between we're vulnerable, we got attacked. 1,200 people were brutally set on fire and raped and just mutilated in the worst ways. But also, we are tough. We are strong. We will win this battle. And I think that was a very difficult balance to strike, but he did it quite well. Number two was to communicate this unity in that it's not just our fight, it's your fight too. It's not going to be just our victory, it'll be your victory too. And really hitting home the point that terrorists are not just after Israel, but first comes Israel, then comes the United States or the West in general. And I think that he drove that point home quite well. And lastly was to say, give us the arms and we'll do it quicker. And I think that was the bottom line, and that was the message that he was trying to convey in a very compelling way, to say, we're very happy with the United States. He kept it very bipartisan. He said Joe Biden was a great Zionist and has helped him along the way. No complaints, but if you give us more, if you give it to us quicker, we'll take care of the job quicker. And he left it at that.
Now, there were protesters who were not happy that Netanyahu was in Washington. A number of them dumped maggots, mealworms, and crickets throughout the Watergate Hotel where he was staying.
Yeah, it was disgusting. I don't know if you got to see any of that footage, but it was absolutely disgusting. Right. So, we knew that the protests were coming. They've been going on for months now around the United States and Canada. I know you guys have your fair share of those protests as well, whether they're on college campuses or in the center square. They did this in front of, the very, important, the places of significance and symbolism in Washington, D.C., including in front of the train station there. They took down 2 American flags and put up Palestinian flags. They actually got together and burned an American flag. They were wearing Hamas gear, Hezbollah gear, and there's actually multiple Hamas flags there. This is not a pro-Palestinian protest. This is not something about land or policy. This is not against Bibi Netanyahu. This is absolutely pro-terrorism and anti-Americanism. When you burn an American flag, when you bring down 2 American flags on American soil in the capital of the United States. So it was very hard to watch this footage. Graffiti everywhere in very, very important, monuments and again squares and such in Washington D.C. A lot of desecration. All of it saying, "Watch out to the West. Hamas is coming." A lot of threats towards the United States.
Now, how many people were actually arrested? Those who tore down the flags and burned them?
Yeah, we heard the spokesperson. to the White House talking about this yesterday, and she doubled down on the fact that they are very much supportive of peaceful protesters, and it's free speech until it gets violent, and then the police will step in. A lot of this was violent, and a lot of this was, in fact, desecration of property, trespassing, doing a lot of those things, trying to get into the rotunda in Congress, trying to get into different representatives' offices, even talk about an insurrection, right? This was, in fact, completely out of control and out of hand. And I know that local police try to keep this at bay and try to kind of take a step back and pass it off as free speech. But you can't. You just cannot watch these people, burn American flags, tag all these monuments, threaten the police, get into their faces, and do nothing and really just chalk it up to freedom of speech. It's not that. It's not that at all. It's hate speech. It's violence, and it's meant to threaten. And what's threatening the United States in this way, in this political way, is terrorism. This is, in fact, terrorism. This is a national security issue. And I hope that law enforcement, whether it's in Los Angeles, where we saw them take a step back when, Jewish a synagogue and some businesses were attacked a couple weeks ago on Sunday, or in this case, police have to step in much sooner to prevent a lot of this from happening.
Now, Lisa, you talked about the violence. U.S. Capitol Police used pepper spray on many of the anti-Israel protesters. The crowd allegedly failed to obey an order from police to move back from the police line, and that's when things really escalated.
Right. And, it's as if they came there to escalate, right? Hal, we know this. The day before Benjamin Netanyahu got to town, I think we were saved by someone from above because it was pouring rain and only a handful of protesters came out in front of the hotel. But yesterday they came out in droves, and the police, the only, again, recourse they had, as you said, was to use pepper spray to at least disperse the crowd. Again, police have been very reluctant here in the United States to step forward in these protests for fear of escalation. And that, again, that's intimidation of the police. And when they will not back it down, well, then when they're actually beating up and punching police officers in the face, we saw a lot of that in New York, when they're taking down the American flag, when they're touching public property like that in a way that is just meant to destroy and send a message like that. There has to be a clear message that this is not tolerated. Until that is done, we're going to see more and more of these protests. They're going to be, shutting down the roads to the airport, like we saw in New York and Los Angeles. They're going to be shutting down the roads to the hospital. We saw that here in Los Angeles again. They're not going to back down until they realize that there will be consequences.
Let's talk a lot about Israel's battles right now, Lisa. I mean, they've been fighting a number of terrorist groups, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis, and of course Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, speaking of Hezbollah, the militant group published new drone footage of an airbase near Haifa. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how much these terror groups have advanced in the last decade or so, using technologies to show off their capabilities and to threaten Israel and the rest of the world regarding their capabilities. Now, I want to talk a minute about Hezbollah and the threat that it is. So Hezbollah is the first child. It is the golden proxy of Iran's regime. They are the most well-endowed and well-funded and well-resourced in terms of military capability of the terror proxies. So they have about 150 to 200,000 missiles. That's short, medium, long-term, long-range missiles, as well as drones, as well as 30 to 50,000 trained fighters. These are all pointed towards Israel. And then Haifa, of course, being in northern Israel, being within easy shot for them. This is what they do. They send out these videos to threaten and to show their capability, a muscle flex. What's interesting about using video, Hal, is that the same videos were used by Hamas to show the pillage that they did on October 7th. The burning of families, the rapes, the women who had bloodied pants, and the world still can see this and say it didn't happen. This is by their own account. This is not something that was fabricated by AI, but the terror organizations themselves, audacious enough to record these incidences and then spread them as propaganda to say, this is who we are, we can do more of this. And then the world defends them. And then you have useful idiots on the streets of Washington, D.C., defending them and carrying their flag and burning the American flag in a salute to Hamas and Hezbollah. So it's a backwards, dangerous world we live in right now.
Okay, closer to home, Lisa, let's talk about Joe Biden dropping out of the presidential race as he handed the reins to Kamala Harris. Many of her supporters seem to believe that Harris stands a much better chance of beating Trump in November. But the DNC, however, has instructed Harris challengers to declare their candidacy by Saturday.
Right. So it's interesting. The Democrats find themselves in a very awkward position. On the one hand, they want to rally behind this momentum. And what is this momentum? Well, Kamala Harris had even a lower approval rating than Joe Biden did when he was in office, when he is in office, I should say. She's not likable. But with this change, because ever since the debate between Biden and Trump, they felt that morale was so low. They knew that Biden did not stand a chance to win because he's just not capable of serving anymore. They want to now be excited and say, well, she's young, she's a woman, we got Joe out of the way, and now maybe she can carry the torch. And it's not because of who she is. Yes, she's a woman of color, and she's young-ish for politics. So, they would like to rally behind her, but they're also rallying behind her because she's not Trump. The point of this election for Democrats is to prevent Trump from winning. And if they can, whomever it is, if it's Kamala, the reason why I think a lot of Democrats would like a different candidate, they would prefer a different candidate, and I think the polls did show that prior to Joe Biden stepping down, is because they have such little time and they will have a hard time raising funds. They will have a hard time rallying everyone around, getting the memo out and getting someone else elected. Now, Kamala Harris became the de facto candidate without earning even one single vote by Democrats. And that is the issue, and that a lot of people are grappling with right now. So will Democrats put up a new candidate altogether? Or will they try to fake it till they make it, so to speak, and try to ride the momentum that Kamala has brought in? A lot of women's groups, a lot of minority groups, a lot of young people are trying to get the word out to, in fact, vote for Kamala and to defeat Donald Trump.
What's interesting is Kamala Harris obviously has a lot of support in the United States with the Democrats, but she has a lot of support here in Canada as well because she went to high school in Montreal for 3 years. So there's that Canadian connection as well. But a lot of Canadians also would much rather see Donald Trump become the next president, even though many argue that both are protectionists. It's not really going to help Canada, especially when it comes to trade. But let's talk about Donald Trump and maybe some of his momentum since the assassination attempt. We've all seen the T-shirts and we've seen the images, fight on, fight with the blood dripping. Has he had a lot of momentum since the assassination attempt?
Quickly thereafter, he had a tremendous amount of momentum, and I saw a lot of influential Democrats come out and say, "Wow, we applaud him." Matt Zuckerberg from Zuckerberg from Facebook came out and said, he's a courageous man. He used different words that I won't share right now, but it's interesting to see him get that kind of street cred, so to speak, in the aftermath of the assassination attempt. But the media very quickly overturned that and took it away. And he had a lot of momentum from the RNC as well. I think a lot of Republicans and Democrats thought that he was more mild-mannered than he has been, that the assassination attempt did something to him, even though he is very brave and very strong, and he put his fist up and all of that. And there were others, women on The View, for example, on ABC, who said that the whole thing was fabricated and he's lying and he's kind of milking it and all of that. I mean, right. So there's the whole spectrum, right? Look, we said this 4 years ago, Hal, and we'll say it again. This will be an election for Donald Trump or against Donald Trump. And that is the persona that is Donald Trump. Either you love his policies, you get him and what he stands for. And we're seeing a lot of middle-class Americans actually get him. And, I was watching some of the NBC coverage, which is definitely not pro-Donald Trump, traditionally speaking, at the RNC, and they said something very interesting. They said the amount of times we're hearing food prices, gas prices, the average American worker, it's as if we're at the DNC, and that's a very interesting shift for the Republican Party. Now, what it's going to come down to, unfortunately, Hal, and it's so embarrassing to say this, because it would come down to the economy, the border, foreign policy, it will come down to abortion. And that is very sad and very misguided. And the reason is, and I'm not dismissing the importance of abortion as a topic, but I think that the Democrats know that that is a very sensitive subject for many people, and that that is where they are not overlapping at all, especially with the selection of J.D. Vance as VP. He has a more hardline stance on abortion. I wish Americans would understand that it's going to come down to the states. That's how Donald Trump sees it. I hope that Kamala Harris sees it the same way, and that we can come up with a very nuanced, informed way to deal with abortion where it favors everyone and we can agree on it as Americans. That's really that's the upsetting thing, Hal, because covering foreign policy, for example, you see all the crises in the world that affect national security for us here in the West. It affects Canada. It affects the United States. Look at immigration, for example. It affects our northern border with Canada. It affects our southern border with Mexico. So these are such important topics. And of course, inflation and the economy and jobs and all those other things that we want Americans to focus on and vote for the candidate who best answers those questions for Americans. Instead, we're getting our information off of TikTok and off of influencers and off of Instagram, and these are not exactly portrayed in the ways that these candidates would handle those matters.
Political correspondent and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, thanks again for joining us today from Los Angeles.
Thank you so much.
With the ongoing housing crisis and high inflation levels combined with an opioid crisis, there are some serious challenges for low-income families, those with addictions, and the homeless. Joining us now is Ken Kissick. He is a co-founder of Streets Alive Mission in Lethbridge. Ken, welcome back to Bridge City News. Great to have you on today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so Ken, many of our viewers do know what Streets Alive Mission is all about, but maybe some don't. So perhaps you can give us a snapshot of what you do here in Lethbridge.
Very quickly, we have two streams. One is the mission stream that deals with the vulnerable population. The other stream is helping people in recovery from the addictions. And just in the first 3 months, from January to the end of the March, we had 4,208 people or 4,208 visits to our services in the downtown mission from 1,182 individuals. We added 65 new clients. Within the recovery program, we have a waiting list of 104 people waiting for 55 beds that we currently have that are full. We did 15 intakes in that period of time. So it's high volume. We're the closet for the street people, and we are a faith-based recovery program that's abstinence-based. So that's us in a nutshell.
Yeah, you are very, very needed, especially right now with the crisis that's going on. So, Ken, how bad is the opioid crisis in Lethbridge right now? Has it stayed about the same, or has it improved or gotten worse?
It's bad, and it's getting worse.
Yeah.
The Lethbridge and Blood Reserve lost 153 people in 2023 to opioid. It's awful.
That's devastating.
Yes, and because all of those people were parts of families, so that's devastation just across the board.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now one of the outreaches that you run, correct me if I'm wrong, is the Parkside Men's Recovery Home, right? So it's now recognized by the government of Alberta, and I'm told that this recovery center has an impressive success rate of 78%.
Yeah, Parkside Home is part of our Recovery Road, which is the recovery program that we run for men and women. And our recovery program, we provide housing. This is one of the housing units, which is Parkside. It holds up to 16 men at any given time.
Okay, that is an impressive success rate that you have there.
That's an overall success rate on an average over a year. So yes, we're very proud of it.
Okay, so with that said, maybe describe what happens on a day-to-day and weekly basis at a home like this. What kind of assistance is offered?
So what you're going to see is you're going to see individuals in both in the men and women's program that are taking programming. They're doing things like prayer and proverbs. They're doing recreational therapy. They're doing Genesis one-on-one process. So we have a number of people in one-on-ones. They're in group classes. They're in what we call, addictions recovery, which is the theory part, the clinical part of that. And then there's a biblical worldview part. So right now we run about 50% of the program is clinical, 50% of the program is biblical worldview.
Wow. And the clinical portion of that, is that run by, counselors, psychologists? What type of professionals?
These are all, everybody's in classes. These are trained individuals that are trained in being able to manage group therapy. We do, where we're looking for professional counseling, we will send them out to some of the agencies in town. But a large part, it's just group counseling, one-on-one. We're really trying to help them deal with the trauma in their life, walk them through it. It's the minimum is 120 days that we ask them to commit to, and then after that, we ask them to commit in 90-day chunks.
Wow. Okay. So that's a good chunk there for sure. Now, Ken, the men's recovery home apparently is in need of replacement, and I understand you're looking at a few options right now, including rebuilding on the current location, but a better option became available. Maybe fill us in a little bit.
The current men's home, we purchased it in 1998. It was an old building at that time. Parts of the building were built in 1909. And it just is at a stage where it's run out of life. Any more money that we put into it isn't there. We were wanting to build on a lot that we also own right there, but we've since acquired an 8-plex that will allow us to basically renovate a parking lot that's underneath and put an addition on it. And it would give us 32 beds in a combined atmosphere. And it's located in a more suitable location, not in the downtown.
Okay, Ken, so then if I understand correctly, you already have a large down payment on the building which would house that men's home, along with what you're looking at, was it $560,000 commitment from the city toward renovations?
So the project with purchase and renovation is $2.4 million. We have $560,000 from the city. We're waiting to hear on an $850,000 grant from the province. We've raised approximately $400,000, and so we need about another $600,000. By the end of May, we'd like to bring that in, and that will allow us to close out the purchase and then begin the renovation process.
Okay, well, that's a lot of money, and I'm sure donations would be helpful at a time like this, right? So how can viewers donate to the cause?
We are running what we call our Coming Home campaign. If they go to the website, www.streetsalive.ca, they'll see it on the top bar. Just click on campaign, and you can donate right there. Just mark it for the campaign.
Okay, and then can you also see the need for another building to house this stage 4 men who have worked through their addiction challenges and are re-entering society? So can you tell us a bit about the building that became available for this?
So in this whole process, we were in a process of consolidating our programs. We were spending $350,000 a year plus in lease payments, and we are now actively trying to acquire property where those lease payments will just go into operations. We had a generous donor who provided close to $1 million for us. That allowed us to purchase the Galt Manor, which is an 8-plex located within the community, and we are already using that as stage 4 housing for a number of our people. So that's in place. The purchase of the 8-plex and its renovation will solidify the recovery program because we already own our women's program, or our women's housing program. The Segway home is already renovated and paid for.
Okay, so that's at stage 4. So I'm assuming the stage 1 is those first 120 days that they have to commit to. And then would stage 2 be the additional 90 days that you were talking about? At what point do they get to stage 4? Maybe
stage 1 and 2 are the first 120 days.
Okay.
Then stage 3 and 4 take the time after that. Stage 3, they usually stay within our programmed housing, and then stage 4, little less accountability, no on-site staff, those kinds of things.
More autonomy. Okay.
And the next step from that is on their own.
Right. So, Ken, how difficult is it for these gentlemen to find and keep a job that will be able to pay their bills?
The challenge isn't necessarily getting a job to pay their bills and keeping that job. The challenge is finding a job that will help them continue on their recovery journey. Sometimes the jobs they had, the environment is not conducive to being able to maintain that recovery. There are, places that are difficult, that they're high in things, and so it's trying to align them. We have an employment readiness program that we will run some of our individuals through, because sometimes they haven't been employed for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So there's about a 6-month program. Then we try and help them find work that's more conducive to what's going on. And of course, our stage 4 housing is affordable, so it's not market rent. So we're able to help them that way.
Okay, that's wonderful. Now, your actual home base for Streets Alive is currently located right downtown across from the court building in Lethbridge. So maybe tell us about the new location and the building that you were blessed with.
So 30 years ago, God called us to the downtown core. He provided facilities for us because this is where the vulnerable needed the most help and where it seemed like the most hopelessness was. In January of 23, he released us from here. And quickly, through a series of events, the El Dorado property on the north side, 17,000 square foot building, 2.59 acres came available, and we were able to pull the money together and have purchased it. We are currently leasing it back to the owners because they need to rebuild, but then we'll go in and renovate. The other thing that happened to us in the downtown is the needs has grown. 30 years ago, we had 20 people on the street. Now our street population is in excess of 200. We were helping 10 or 12 people a day. Now we help 65 or 70. And so that we just needed more space. And so it's exciting. The opportunity for us is there. God is, this project and everything else is something he has called us to do. But the reality is this will only be done with his miraculous provision through his people. So those that feel called to help, to simply go to the website and tune in, click on the campaign. There's lots of information there, and you can choose to help however you want.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's exciting, but at the same time, the fact that there's a need for it, it's kind of like, it's just so sad as well.
The difficulty is that 30 years ago, we were dealing largely with drugs that weren't going to kill you today. Today, we are dealing with drugs that will kill you instantly, and depending on the batch that you get. So the need becomes more desperate to help these people get away from the drug life and to be able to move them into something that's a lot better.
The stories you must hear on a daily basis, Ken.
We see them on a daily basis.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So getting back to your building plans, how are all these plans sitting with the city, like the municipality and the local community? Is there opposition to your plan, or are you generally getting support for this?
For the most part, we have support. There's still always hurdles. The 8 Collect project requires a rezoning, and that's in process, but we had a neighborhood meeting. Very favorable. The neighbors completely understand what we're trying to do because we've already been there 3 years. And so they're just looking forward because we're going to upgrade the building. It'll become a nice feature within the community. It's 40 years old now, so it needs some TLC, but then it'll look like a new structure.
No, that's wonderful. That is definitely, certainly exciting. Absolutely. Kind of going back to the basics here of what you guys do, is it completely voluntary for these people to come to you?
Yes. Yeah. All of our services and our recovery programming and everything else is voluntary. Nobody is forced to do it, and nobody is turned away. Obviously, we're a faith-based group, but that's not a criteria for them participating. We're more than willing to help anyone who wants to receive our help. However, we make it clear we are biblical-based programming, and a lot of times, most of the people that come in find their help in Christ, because He is really the true healer that can help them out of the trauma and the things in their life.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that sometimes people have to come back again and again and kind of redo the program with you?
Obviously, not everybody is successful off the hop.
Mm-hmm.
We call ourselves the organization of a million second chances. So yeah, we'll bring. There's a process, but we'll always bring people back and through. But we have a pretty high success rate of those that are committed to getting through it. Mm-hmm. We love them and accept them where they are, and then we work with them, challenge them, keep them accountable, and again, we have that success rate that we believe is really great.
Right. We did talk a lot about men's help there, but you help women as well, of course, don't you?
Yeah, we have up to 14 women in the same kind of a program. Some of the programming that we do is joint, and some is as a close. But yeah, and the women are about the same rate of success as well. Our residences are homes. That's what we try to create them to be, and we create that home environment, and we give strength to it, and we're very excited about a lot of the successes. We are seeing families reunited, men getting visitation and custody rights back to their children, those kinds of things. And this is just all God and His handiwork as people commit themselves to allowing Him to heal them.
Fabulous. Maybe really quickly remind us how viewers can donate to the cause.
Streetsalive.ca. Click on a donate button, and you can donate through Canada Helps. You can donate online. You can send us a check. The address is on the website, and if not, it is 323 4th Street South, Lethbridge, Alberta, T1K2G1.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Ken, for speaking with us today. So great to have you on again.
Thank you very much for having me. It was great.
Ken Kissick is the co-founder of Streets Alive Mission in Lethbridge. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.